Hi everyone, in this video I'm sharing a recipe for a really simple but lovely neem oil soap. Probably a lot of you already know that I love India and southern India in particular, and anything to do with neem and neem oil is really popular there. And when you go into supermarkets and shops in India, there's always a neem soap. It has a lot of benefits according to Ayurvedic medicine, which I won't go into because I don't have any expertise in that area. But it's a really fun and different and enjoyable soap to make. The main base oils that I'm using in this recipe, I've chosen because I want this recipe to be accessible to people in southern India and in places around that region, tropical countries. So I'm using tropical oils for this. I'm using coconut oil and palm oil and neem oil. That's it. Those three are the main oils for the soap recipe. If you want to learn a bit more about palm oil and my thinking about it, it is a really challenging ingredient to use, especially to share with people because it's very controversial. But I did some videos recently about it where I discuss all the ins and outs, and it's a pretty good education. I think it's really important for people to understand what that's all about. So check out the links in the description for the palm oil videos. I'll share those. I've pretty much got everything ready here. I've got my caustic soda, my sodium hydroxide that I will use to make my lye solution. I've got my palm oil and my coconut oil. These both came from New Directions in Sydney. Thank you very much for sending me these ingredients to use in my videos. I've also got some neem oil from New Directions, and I had some neem oil that I bought from an Indian grocery close to where I live. So it's quite easy for me to get these ingredients, but New Directions have lovely neem oil as well. It's fairly widely accessible. I've also got some neem powder, which is ground neem leaves, dried neem leaves powder. I got this from my Indian market, and I'm going to add some of that to the soap, which will be a nice texture. And neem oil, if you've never used it before in soap recipes, you don't want to use too much. It's really quite strong. If you use too much, it can smell a bit unpleasant. So I'm keeping my recipe to 10%. I have made 15% before, but it's a bit strong. So 10%. And to round out the fragrance of this soap, I'm going to be using some eucalyptus essential oil and some mei chang or some litsi kubia. I hope I've said that right. Some mei chang. That one's from the Philippines, and this one, I don't know where that's from, but anyway, it's Eucalyptus radiata. But I know that eucalyptus is really widely accessible in India as well. So I've got my mold ready, I've got my safety gear ready, I've got my jugs and everything. I'm going to go ahead and make this soap. The first thing I had to do when I made this soap was I had to melt my coconut oil. I filmed this in early September, which is kind of still quite cool here in Brisbane. It's very early spring, and my coconut oil in this bottle was still pretty solid. So I put a bit of cold water in the bottom of my little sink and then topped that up with some hot water. You don't want it too hot if you're doing this because you don't want to damage the plastic, but just some nice warm water to sit your coconut oil in. That will melt, and then you can pour it out. Next, while my coconut oil was melting, I decided to get my lye solution ready. I've got my goggles. Make sure you know everything you need to know about soap making safety before you make soap. I'll put links to my safety video in the description box. It's really, really important if you're a beginner that you fully understand what you're doing with soap making. This is really, really important. Anyway, so to make my lye solution, I'm adding some cold rainwater. This is just rainwater that I filter from my backyard garden rainwater tank. I just filter that through a coffee filter, and it's really lovely to use in soap recipes because it's really soft water. Our tap water here is quite hard. So I measure out my water, and I will put all of the details for this recipe in the description box, but it's a 2:1 water to lye ratio I'm using for this recipe. So I've got 284 grams of water, and now I'm weighing out 142 grams of sodium hydroxide. Do this really carefully. You have to wear goggles all the time through soap making. You do not want this stuff in your eyes. So weigh out your sodium hydroxide. Be really careful and precise and take your time when you're doing this. And when you're ready, make sure you've got a nice ventilated area. Slowly and carefully add your sodium hydroxide into your water. You never want to do it the other way around, folks. You always want to add the sodium hydroxide or the caustic soda into the water. Don't add the water into it or it'll fizz up and it'll be terrible and it could be quite dangerous. So always do it this way. And then once you've poured that in, you can kind of slowly stir it through a little bit. You can see I opened my window up a little bit wider there. A lovely cool spring breeze coming through the window there, which was great. And just very, very carefully and gently just stir it for a little while the sodium hydroxide dissolves into the water. And once you've used that container, make sure you rinse that out straight away too, because you just don't want to be getting any of that anywhere or touching it accidentally. I always rinse out my containers straight away. Now that my lye solution is made, I'm just setting it aside just to let it cool off a little bit, and I'm going to weigh out my palm oil and my coconut oil. This is a really, really basic recipe, but oh my gosh, it is possibly my favorite soap I've made all year round. I filmed this quite a while ago and I've been using this soap a lot and it is really, really good. I'm loving this recipe. It's really, really simple. It's 50% palm oil, 40% coconut oil, and 10% neem oil. That's the formula. Really, really basic. So this is my palm oil going in. I'm using 500 grams of that. I'm using 1,000 grams of 1 kilogram oil batch all together. So that's my palm. That, if you watch my palm oil videos, I've got 2 of them. The second one shows how to handle and store palm oil and how to mix it before you use it in your soap making. So if you want an explanation of how to do that, then check that out. I'll put a link to that below. And now I made a little bit of a mistake here. I put my neem oil into my palm oil. I just weighed it straight in there. And then I realized after I poured it in that I actually needed to melt the palm oil, which I wanted to do very gently in my microwave, but I didn't want to microwave my neem oil unnecessarily. So this was a bit silly. Don't do this, people. I realized then, oh, poop. I shouldn't have put my neem oil in there. So I kind of carefully poured out the neem oil into another bowl just temporarily. Obviously, I couldn't get all of it out, but that's okay. Just set that aside, and then I microwaved just on very, very low power, like 30% power or something. Just microwaved my palm oil for a while just to melt it. And there it is, it's done. You don't want it really hot, you just want it fully melted. Ideally for this soap recipe, you're looking for your oils and your lye solution to be somewhere around body temperature. You want them to be warm, but not hot. So to my warmed, melted palm oil, now I add my neem oil back in. And I'll use this little spatula to get every last little drop out of the bowl. I don't want to waste any of that neem oil. All right, so I've got the palm and the neem, and now my coconut oil is going in. That was 100 grams of neem oil, by the way. 500 grams of palm oil, 100 grams of neem oil, and now 400 grams of coconut oil. So this is some lovely coconut oil, refined coconut oil from New Directions. I'm just pouring it into this jar because this cool weather might hold on for a little bit longer, and it's a lot easier to melt a portion of it in a jar than it is from the big bottle. So that's why I pour my coconut oil into jars. I can just scoop out what I need. But in this instance, I'm just pouring it straight into my neem and my palm oil. So 400 grams going in there. I use the back of the spoon on the edge of the jar. That really, really helps. You don't get any drips then or any mess. That is a very good trick. You can also use a chopstick or any kind of spoon. I'm just labeling my jar there, and I'll put that all away. Now I get my essential oils ready. Got my little jar. I love those little jars for the essential oils. They're just really handy, nice way to store it. You can put the lid on, that way if you knock it over, you're not going to spill any, and it sort of can just stay nice and secure until you're ready. So that was the Litsi, that was the Mei Chang, and I'm not sure if it was meant to be that yellowy colour. I feel like it's a bit old, but I wanted to use it up and it smells so good. So this is 30 grams of Litsi Cubia or Mei Chang and 30 grams of eucalyptus oil. So that's, I'll put all the details for that in the recipe, but it's a fairly strong amount, but these are both safe essential oils to use at that amount. And it's it's quite a large batch of soap. So don't be alarmed by how much essential oil I'm using. It's actually the perfect amount, and the fragrance with this neem oil, it is perfect. Oh, my stick blender. Yes, I ended up fixing it. Do you remember how it had a really terrible sound like it was dying? Well, I poured a little bit of Singer sewing machine oil down the little hole, just a few drops, and it's fixed. So that was good. So I've got all of my oils ready to go now, and you can see they're pretty good temperature, slightly on the cool side, but my lye solution was a bit hotter. So I decided to leave the lye solution a little bit warm, and my oils are a little bit cooler than I want them to be, and the two can kind of equal each other out then. Getting my mold ready, getting everything ready is really, really important in soap making. I think that's the most important part, is just being organized, getting everything ready before you start, and that way you've got everything on hand and you know what you're doing. Now this is the ground neem leaf powder that I wanted to add. I started with one small, this is like a US tablespoon, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to add two. There's no harm in adding pretty much as much of this as you like, but it does make the soap go brown because it's a botanical ingredient, and it's just the ground up dried leaves of the neem tree. Without this soap isn't brown, but I really wanted to have the texture of it, and it's actually quite a nice little gentle exfoliant in the soap. I'm really, really loving using this soap. But you could just use a teaspoon if you want. You can use 2 tablespoons. Just, you know, play around with that. Maybe try 1 tablespoon if you like. It just depends on how much you want. I'm adding that into my oils first and mixing that through thoroughly. And then I add my essential oils in first as well. Partly it's because I've never actually made this recipe before. I'm pretty sure I know how it's going to go, but I wasn't sure if it was going to trace, you know, how quickly it was going to trace on me and thicken up when I started blending it. So, and I wasn't going to do any swirls or anything. So I thought there's no harm in me just putting those additional ingredients in at the beginning. That way I don't have to worry about trying to mix them through when the soap has become thick. So they're all mixed in, and my lye solution goes in, and I just start very gently mixing that with a whisk, because when you add lye solution to oils, it sinks right to the bottom. So I like to just give it a bit of a stir and just kind of look at my soap and look at my oils and think about what I'm going to do next, and just see how it reacts for a little bit. I don't know what that is. I just like to see how it's going to react, just in case it's going to trace quickly on me. But I could see fairly quickly that this one was going to benefit from some good stick blending. There's nothing going on in a major hurry here. Look at that color change. I love that. I love that. That's the beauty of using a stick blender, is that you get that emulsion that is harder to achieve without mechanical blending. You could just whisk this soap though if you didn't have a blender. You would just need to make sure that you whisked it or mixed it enough until you got that color change, and that you know that your oils and your lye are fully emulsified. That's really, really important. Otherwise the soap's going to separate and it won't be safe to use and you'll have to rebatch it. So definitely get a stick blender in there, even just for a short few bursts, just to get it started. But surprisingly, even though there's so much saturated fat in this recipe, it's all saturated fat, this didn't race to a trace. I think that's palm oil. Something about it, it doesn't actually trace extremely fast. But this recipe is 40% coconut oil too, and it does trace very fast usually. So interesting how this combination worked the way that it did. I poured this straight into my mold while it's still fairly runny. I wanted a really nice smooth soap and it turned out beautiful, but I don't know, I have slightly miscalculated the recipe for this mold and it's ended up giving me a little bit more, although I did put a lot of essential oils in and 2 big tablespoons of the neem leaf powder, so that's increased my volume a little bit. Sometimes that happens. It's worthwhile having a little silicone mold, individual mold on hand to pour any excess into. I started to put some texture in the top of this soap, and then as soon as I did it, I changed my mind. So you can see me here just very delicately trying to fix up the little mess that I made in the corner of the soap. Oh, fun. You probably, if you've seen my other soap making videos, you'll know that I love plain soap. I am a bit of a plain Jane. For me, it's all about the recipe and how the soap functions. I just, I do like swirly soaps. Actually, my next video is going to be a swirly soap. I've already got that recorded too. I need to edit that soon. Yeah, but I don't make swirly decorative soaps very often. I love really good recipes. That's what I'm into. So just spraying some alcohol on the top there, some isopropyl alcohol, and that helps prevent soda ash, which is that white ashy look that you can get on the top of some soaps, particularly ones that are really high in saturated fatty acids. I've been talking to some of the group members in the Ellie's Everyday membership about all of this recently, and talking about soda ash prevention and stuff. Lots and lots of good tips going on in that group. If you'd like to join that, check out the description box. There's a link for that down below. And this is me putting my soap into my cooler to insulate it, to keep it warm actually, not to keep it cool, but just it's an insulated box, and I've put some chopsticks on top of the soap to create a little bit of a barrier between that and the board I put on the top, because I slightly overfilled that soap mold. It was a bit too full. Anyway, wrapped it up in a nice warm blanket because I really want this soap to gel, and I just left it for a while. Now here is the soap gelled. I couldn't resist. I probably should have left this in there, but I couldn't help myself. I had to peek, and you can see the surface of the soap has got a bit of a horrible looking jelly bit where the chopstick and the thing stuck to it, so that was a bit of a mistake. But anyway, so I did end up getting a partial gel, but that's because I think I took this soap out of the warm insulated area. Ideally, if you want it to gel completely and go all the way to the ends, leave it. Don't do what I did, just leave it somewhere warm. Given that this soap is made with all tropical oils, really hard saturated fats, apart from that little bit of neem oil, I knew that I would cut this pretty soon. So this is the same day, later in the evening, about 4 or 5 hours later. It's still slightly soft, like I can feel it on the side there. It's got a little bit of softness to it, but it is well and truly hard enough for me to cut. So if you make this recipe or something similar to this, don't leave it too long. Definitely don't leave this overnight. It will be too hard to cut the next day. And because this soap is pretty fresh, I decided to put some gloves on just to protect my skin because it's not fully saponified yet. Look at that partial gel. I shouldn't have peeked. I should have let my soap just sit and do its thing. So, you know, it's not the most attractive log of soap that I've ever made, but I tell you, I love this recipe. It is brilliant. If you did not want to use palm oil in your soap recipe, if you want to make this recipe but make it without palm oil, you could substitute the palm oil with tallow, so beef tallow or lard or one of the animal fats, if you didn't want to use palm oil, and that would work out exactly the same, just as good. Look at that. It's just a very plain brown soap, but I tell you, this is a really good recipe. I really have been loving using it. I forgot to say too, this recipe includes a 10% super fat. So it's not very drying. It's a lovely hard soap, so it's going to be perfect for people in tropical countries where there's lots of heat and humidity. It's not going to go gooey on you. It's a perfect summertime soap, even for Brisbane, where we've got quite humid, warm summers too, and we can sometimes get lots of rainfall, which makes your soap go soggy just with the humidity. But because this soap's got 40% coconut oil, which is quite a lot, I added a 10% super fat into this recipe, and that just makes it the perfect amount of kind of conditioning and gentleness to it. So it's a really lovely, perfectly well balanced soap recipe for people who live in warm climates, who want a nice hard bar of soap in the summertime that's got a good lather, that's not too drying, good super fat, and yeah, it's just brilliant. I'm just loving this. And there it is. There's the final soap. Slightly messy on the top. If you want to make this soap, you might want to do something different to your tops to make them look better than mine. But I'm happy with mine. It's perfect for a household soap. Those little end pieces, like I said before, they did end up going brown all the way through, so, you know, it was fine. Even if you did get a partial gel on this soap, it's no big deal. So if you don't want this soap to be brown, and if you want it to be a lighter green colour, make sure you leave out the neem leaf powder if you don't want it to go dark brown. But other than that, it's a wonderful soap. I hope you give it a try. I will put lots more details in the written recipe. Thanks for watching, everybody. Really appreciate your support, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye.